Okay, we're live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Andrew of the 6G podcast. I will put a link to his podcast in the show notes. And this will be a part two to the show. The part one was last Friday, so it was just over 6 days ago. And that one was the from PSYOP, what I titled it. It's From PSYOP to MindWar, The Psychology of Victory Revisited, which was written by Paul Vallely and the notorious Michael Aquino. I've done shows on and written about, and children, I don't know, Children of the Beast, but definitely Global Death Cult, because he was in contact with guys who started the O9A. But this is, we've done other shows. We've talked about the Dark Enlightenment, Fort Bragg, Global Elite Satanic Pedo Rings, and just what the 6G is, which the agenda is going on. And that persistence of agenda is a very scary thing. The persistence of the agenda attached to this mind war, this idea of like going from just PSYOP to just general mind war against populations. And you'd like to think it would just be foreign populations, but I think that that's naive. I think that the American people are under full-on mind war, and probably have been on full-on mind war for decades in this kind of evil, in my opinion, evil empire we're in, like some kind of post-republic phase. So it's very important to study this, study what these guys are thinking, study what these PSYOP experts are thinking, because they do turn it on us. And I've done shows that are just titled PSYOP after PSYOP after PSYOP, because that's what's happening. And you see that here. Like, I've looked through this whole so-called moon thing. It's like, whoa, a lot of this stuff is fake, man. That's just a lot of fake and things that are distractions. This whole thing about this woman being abducted, Guthrie, which I guess is an important story, but there's so many other important things happening, like the potential for thermonuclear war in the Middle East, that like you got to wonder what's going on. Anyway, Andrew can talk more about that. There's 3 books by Aquino that we're going to reference. So, Andrew, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you for having me. And excited to get into this. Definitely Mind Wars, we're in it. And this book, I highly recommend everybody, get it. It's definitely worth reading. Mind Wars. It's it just lays out the whole blueprint, And so we're gonna lay out some of it now, but I just think it's super pertinent for everybody to understand, because what's funny? I mean, this guy's like, comes from the Satanic Church and all this stuff, but he lays out ethical ways to do mind wars. And it's so funny because I've seen direct breaking of these rules with some of the PSYOPs that we're seeing. So it's funny that the controller, they're not even following the blueprint per se, of the ethical standpoints that he lays out. So it's very funny to watch, where it's like, they're not even doing it right necessarily.
So do you think they're just totally unethical? Like he's just like detached from it? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so whenever you read, and we'll get into it, but there's parts in here where he kind of explains like ways to do this where it's, proper, and you're not, and they, we'll get into examples, but like FindFar is a great one, where he kind of lays out all the different ways that you can manipulate people, but doing it in a way where, for instance, people want to see a certain outcome, so you have to deliver that outcome. If you don't deliver the outcome like you're supposed to, then people aren't going to really fall for it as easily. So you have people like us who see through some of these PSYOPs because they're not doing them right. That's kind of the whole thing. People are saying nowadays, oh, I miss the days when people did better PSYOPs. And that's kind of what we're pointing at.
Right. And this one was a follow-on to that 10-page paper, right? So he had written that, and then this was what kind of followed on to that, is my understanding. It's interesting he mentions Arthur C. Clarke, who is another notorious figure in the 20th century. But
2013, this came out, MindWar.
2013, wow.
He wrote the actual first paper. What was that, 1980? Paul Vallely asked him to do that?
I think so, yeah.
Very long in the making. So by the time this was fleshed out into a book, it was fully done. MindStar came out in 2016, and then this book, FindFar here, I think was just a few years following that. And then he died.
At 72, I think, in San Francisco.
Yeah.
After an infamous life. So where do you want to start? Like what? There's a lot in this. Is like,
well, this is my favorite quote in the very beginning. MindWar would have never been completed in its mysterious and intricate journey from vision to book without regular sprinklings of greenish gray pixie dust from my soulmate and muse, Lilith. I thought that was a funny quote that he put in there. The pixie dust aspect, knowing that she's kind of into witchcraft and whatnot. So there's clearly of that witchcraft aspect to applying this in a militaristic way.
Right. And there's a
Yeah.
picture of him with her, like it's pre-AI. He's with Lilith, his kind of like, oh, they were on Geraldo together, actually. So you can see, maybe I can find that video. It's kind of
She looks like Lilith. That's for sure.
She looks pretty. He looks scary too. I just saw a picture of
yeah.
him today. Even as a young kid, he kind of had that view of like, I'm not surprised he became a Satanist.
Have you seen the side by sides of JD Vance and Michael Aquino? And then people take half of Erica Kirk's face and half JD Vance's face, and they're like the same. And so they're like all three the same. And people have kind of pointed to that. Not that I really believe it, but I just think that's interesting.
Kirk is a strange character, it is weird. She's like part of this kind of, what do you call it? Military industrial complex background. It's really crazy.
I think, given this topic and given the, state of affairs that we're seeing, especially with PSYOPs coming from those people, it's so interesting that little comparison can be made, as far as just how they look.
Right.
And I mean, JD Vance changed his name like 3 times, came from a pill addict mother, and all this whole backstory, right? So who knows? And then Erica Kirk decides not to go to the TPUSA event recently. There's like 150 people that end up going there, 180 people viewing it on YouTube. So they had like nothing. And the vice president goes there, but Erica Kirk doesn't. That kind of shows that she kind of supersedes him even. It almost seems like she's really the deep state, that she supersedes him behind doors, I think, behind closed doors.
It's so strange. These people are so strange. How does he get into Yale? It's like the Yale Law School is very coveted. These are odd people. Like, there's no question about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, that's just an interesting current event thing I thought tied in cool. But yeah, so I've got a lot of notes here, but we could pull up the book too if you want, because I've got page numbers.
Okay, I've got it right here.
Yeah, I figured you would. Yeah.
Let's see. Share screen. It's got the kind of like overlapping triangle theme too,
Oh yeah.
Like the hexagram theme or whatever you want to call it.
Some say that's like a rendition of the Star of David in a weird way, or the Remphan,
Yeah,
that 6-pointed.
Yeah.
So he talks about how MindWar is the purpose of it is to seize all control of the means of government and how people process information. That way, what they use to make up their minds and adjust it so that way their minds are made up in your favor. So, I've been getting into stuff called exposure gate, where the deep state is exposing itself in order to kind of use that corruption to generate an outcome that they want, like AI governance, right? For instance. And so that's an example of this, where they're seizing all the means of, information. They're exposing all these, conspiracy theories. You're seeing RFK go, conspiracy theorists were right again, and I just think it's funny that, they're just vindicating conspiracy theorists. So everybody questions everything and they just want to throw out the whole system.
Right. Like, it's just incredible. We're paying taxes to be like psychological warfare against us.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the head of the NIA, or Tulsi Gabbard, came out of psychological operations at Bragg, right? Just like Aquino.
Yeah, and Joe Kent and her, trained together and whatnot, so I think that's interesting as well. Because he's a part of this exposure gate, I think. He comes out, he's against the Iran war. He's going to be probably a future candidacy, probably. That's, to me, very obvious. But people don't have we know from history that people don't have a capability for nuance in these situations. So people will be shown all this exposure and be kind of driven towards their own conclusion. But it's not going to be really their conclusion. They're going to think they're making up their mind, but they're not. That's the point of Mind Wars, right? And so that's what we're watching. And so there's a few people like me and you that may see it, but most people will see this exposure and say, let's do what the system wants, essentially.
They're really good at it. They're really good at manufacturing consent. Like, you can see it from the left, but they've always been able to get away with a lot of this stuff. Like, if you watch TV, you think that the war against Iran and all these false flags and lies are all real. Like, right. I'm like, if you don't watch TV like me and you talk to people who watch TV, you might as well. I mean, in my opinion, like I'm on the other side mentally of like the other side of the Grand Canyon. Like these people are on a whole different planet, man.
That's
Like,
how
we're
it
literally
feels.
talking face to face. Like I've talked to people like, oh yeah, I think we should have gone in. You know, we're going to get nukes. I'm like, in my mind, I don't say it, but I'm like, they've been saying this for 40 years. They're going to get nukes. Like it's
I
the
made the
same freaking
mistake of
line.
saying that, and yeah, they'll definitely brush you off. I was like, isn't it
Yeah.
weird that they've been telling you that for 40 years that they're gonna have it in two weeks? But
I mean, this is the manufacturing consent, and
Mhm.
Trump is in on it. He's just pounding people with like why Iran is bad. They'd never done anything to me, like,
Right.
so I don't.
Me either. You mentioned that they're really good at this. Well, we talked about this last time a little bit. It's good to brush over it again. Psychohistory, we talked about how that was the branch of mathematics of the human reaction, both social and economic stimuli. So it's like if you have enough people to make a conglomerate, as long as they're not aware that they're, being analyzed, then you can have a truly kind of a true conclusive idea of what they'll do when you give them certain stimuluses. Whatever that is, whether it's a false flag or some kind of LGBTQ narrative, whatever it is, right? These are all under the same umbrella.
Right, and that's kind of this idea of hypnosis, like Ericksonian hypnosis is supposed to elicit your response without you knowing it. So, like,
Exactly.
Eric, wouldn't it's Andrew? Don't you think it's a great idea that we attack Iran to keep us safe? Like that's putting the idea into your brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're asking
Flatter you in the
questions. Yeah,
process. Like, yeah,
right.
how?
Don't you
Yep.
think it's a smart move, Andrew, if we do
Mm-hmm.
this now and a little pain now for pleasure later? Or what's the thing now? Like what's the little phrase they're using is not excursion, but it's like pain now and
Oh yeah,
safety later.
pain. Yeah, short-term pain,
Short-term
long-term
pain,
gain,
long-term gain.
and
Yeah.
that's the classic 2 weeks to flatten the curve, right? Like that's what that
Right.
is. That's what that
Right.
sounds like. It's very similar in messaging.
We're
And
6 weeks into this war so far. Like it's not
yeah,
stopped. So
no, not at all. They tell you it has, but it hasn't. They say that it needs to be an art and science and treated as such. And I think that there's some people that really are good at this. Like it is an art and science.
and that's
Um,
interesting. It's a very Crowleyan phrase because that's what magic is, the art and science of affecting change in conformance with will. Like that phrase comes
that's
out.
what
So
this
it's a
is.
phrase.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's crazy. Yeah, so the Achilles heel of MindWar is that they need to deliver the goods that they are judged by the target audience to deliver. So if if I'm running a PSYOP and tell you, X, Y, or Z is going to happen, I need to deliver the goods, right? And so that's something that don't think they're doing as much as, they need to. And so that's why these kind of fall apart on their face.
Right. Right. I think you're right. I mean, do you know what's interesting is like he dedicates this to all these people. Krasner's a close intimate to Jeffrey Epstein.
Hmm.
He's sending emails to Epstein all the time. And it's really something else. And then Lansdale is like the ugly American. Like there's all these. John C. Lilly is part of like mind control stuff, talking to dolphins. Varek's dad, Peter Varek. There's a direct Crowley tie here because Varek's dad was close friends with Crowley.
Wow. You
Yeah,
see, okay, you got a good insight on all these names. I love this. You got good
yeah,
insight on all
because
the.
like Varek, his dad was he wrote something called The Fatherland, which Crowley wrote for.
Wow.
So they were very close friends. And then there's Vallely, we've talked about him. Zass was a hypnotist kind of guy. He's a total doctor. Like, why is Stone in here? I don't know.
Roger?
Yeah, the Oliver Stone, the film
Oh,
director
Oliver's.
is in
Yep,
here.
yep.
Yeah.
That's Well,
Um,
that makes sense. Use
Sidney
hot.
Riley was a spy. He's a Jewish spy. That's not his real name. Machiavelli, of course. Asimov, he quotes. Carradine was also from an occult family. And this is the guy who died he was found in a closet, hanging from a closet.
No shit.
Like it's a very strange thing. Delgado was the guy who believed in putting implants into people's brains.
Yeah, I've heard of that name.
Yeah,
have you ever
seen the video of the bull that stops, and he hits a button and the bull stops?
Yeah.
It was Jose Delgado who did that out of Yale, no less.
No
We were
shit.
just talking about Yale Law School.
Yeah.
Ian Fleming, that's James Bond. Foles wrote a book called The Magician based on Crowley, supposedly. Like, these are just like what he knows and who he knows. He has a good frame of reference.
Oh,
but the Krasner
absolutely.
thing is a direct tie to Epstein's, in the files today.
That's crazy.
It's super crazy.
That Lonsdale, the one of the owners of Palantir is a Lonsdale. I wonder if it's probably not the same.
Is
You
it
said
spelled the same
Lansdale?
way? Lansdale, Lansdale.
It's O-N. Never mind.
Yeah, Lonsdale. Joe Lonsdale's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lansdale was it's interesting you mentioned Stone, because according to other people that have seen pictures, Lansdale was at the site of the death of JFK in 1963. He was seen kind of walking with the three bums. His back was to the camera, but people are like, that's his ring and his gait and all that stuff. So
no shit.
No Esterbrookes, but this guy was Crowley MI6. He was something before MI6. It was called the Secret Intelligence Service before they branched it off to MI5, MI6. So he preceded the other kind of intel stuff, Lizzie. So he was British intel, no question about it.
Another little insight here that I think is important is he gives a definition. It talks about the psychological and physio-psychological conditioning of all participants in a socio-political problem. First, to cooperatively stabilize it without violence. But it says here, implementing a moral community to supersede it. I think that's another thing they don't really deliver on. They're kind of inverting that. They want to give it a more of an immoral community instead, and so a degradation of society rather than establishing more of a what he would call he wants to establish more of like a utopian kind of police state, one that kind of is RAM where everybody's kind of enlightened beings, and this kind of utopian kind of what you would imagine. I mean, it's kind of odd because he comes off as this satanic, child satanic abuser, but he also does throughout this speak in a way of like utopian, which I don't know. You could argue everybody says Lucifer is going to establish a utopia and people will love it, but it will also be a state of like satanic control. So you could argue that, yeah, he's selling dreams, right?
Right. But he's trying to like push forward the idea of psychological operations. Lansdale was a huge psychological operator, by the way. I don't know if you know that. But he was heavily involved in psychological operations in the Philippines, but very creative stuff in Operation Phoenix. And he was very close to the Vietnam War as well. But when he was Magsaysay was in the Philippines, they helped install him, and they would go after the natives. And Lansdale invented this blood-sucking vampire creature where he would take dead bodies and drain them of blood and leave them back on trails so that the natives would find them and get freaked out. So he would literally do like really dark, creative stuff. And it earned him the nickname, the Ugly American.
Damn, I never heard of that. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, you should. I've done a couple of shows on
Lansdale. I'll check that out.
Yeah. So he was like really one of the real early psychological operations officers. And I think also
he knows then.
And also, so Aquino knows this. And that's what Fleming was too before like he was the British version of a psychological operations officer. And he was so good that he lured Hess to the UK where they captured him, like number 3 in the German in the Third Reich, right under Hitler, and I think Himmler or one of them. I forgot.
Hess, yeah, he was top 5 for sure.
Yeah, top 5. But they lured him in, and he thought he was going to go talk to the conservative like UK and help stop the war, and it was all like Fleming's idea. He was doing all, and also Fleming also was one of the other things that he did. Well, you want to talk about dead bodies? Like there was an operation, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but he dumped a body in the Mediterranean with fake information that the Allies were going to land in the south of France before the Normandy invasion. So he tricked all these people into thinking that we were going to do something through Marseille, or the Allies were going to do something Marseille. And so the Germans diverted resources there, and it was all fake. Like they planted these documents. Yeah, so
they've been running game like this for a while.
Yeah,
I mean, this is nothing new. And that guy seems like he was in the first iteration of this,
that's why Fleming could write all those novels, because he really was a spy. Like he really was doing
holy shit.
Yeah.
Just to back up what I was saying a minute ago, it says Any operative must operate with moral valor and dignity. Otherwise, anything less will lead to Orwellian thought police societies. He says that this is a blueprint to lead to Orwellian thought police societies if you don't utilize it correctly. So that's why I pointed out that they're not utilizing it correctly, but do they want to? Because he says that this will lead to an Orwellian thought police society, and maybe that's what they want. Maybe they don't necessarily. I mean, clearly that's where we're heading with the anti-Semitism laws and different things like that, right? The IHRA definition where you can't criticize another country. These are, and I mean, fuck, even if you believe that, Jesus was killed by Jews, I mean, pretty much Christianity is then thrown out. So there's a lot of things, where, the thought police thing is occurring.
No question about it.
Yeah.
That Operation Mincemeat was another one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've heard that one. That might be
that was
where
the
I've heard
body
his
of
name
Glendwar Michael. They dressed him as one of the royal means and put fictitious stuff on there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I've heard that name from. Mincemeat. Yep.
His boss was Fleming's boss was John Godfrey. So that was it. And it's really incredible stuff.
Yeah, so in the end there it just says we have to value human individuality, which again I just think is ironic that he's writing this, right? It seems that he wants to uphold the constitutional values while we also operate in this way because he wants a better society. But again, he's handing over a blueprint that could be manipulated very easily and used for control. So maybe that was the plan the whole time, and he's just saving face.
Interesting.
So page 61, we could look at symbology.
Let's go there. See if I can figure out how to work this thing. 61.
Or it talks more about psychological warfare, propaganda, the use of PSYOPs.
61, there it is.
Strategies.
MindWar branch.
Yeah, it goes from strategies to psychological operation. We could look at some of that. Just see if we see any, correlations with, our everyday messaging.
Let's see. It's the old term, right? These are old concepts according to him.
Yeah. I mean, information, education, persuasion, coercion, compliance, and thought reform. These are the things we're trying to achieve.
Right. That's the whole thing of MK Ultra and all this other stuff. He mentions these early programs too. He knows all this stuff.
Oh, yeah. I think he was heavily involved because he talks about after Vietnam, the frustration they had about, and he was saying it's because we didn't use these enough. I think that he was well read in on it, clearly. He may have been the division for PSYOPs and was pissed off he didn't get utilized enough. It seems that after that, Paul Vallely said, all right, let's get this going. Let's get this blueprint made so we can use PSYOPs and MindWar first. And Aquino, again, remember, Aquino's whole thing is we want to get rid of any use for kinetic warfare altogether, which means any weaponry. We don't need to use it ever. So imagine how all-encompassing they need this to be to accomplish that,
Right. I mean, you don't have to fire a shot. If you win the mind war, it's over, right?
Yep, absolutely. It's easier, let's be honest. It's easier if you don't have a free society. It's easier if you have an Orwellian thought police society rather than letting one perpetuate where people get to have, free dissent.
Right.
It's just annoying.
But you're right. Here he is, primacy of the Constitution. So he just says,
yeah,
we can still have the Constitution. Who cares?
Yeah, he tried. Like I said, he lays out a good argument. Now, again, this is a military, this is for the military. So I think he's just, he's being official, trying to keep it. Because in Mindstar, he even mentions, he says, I went from a fully materialistic standpoint, all physical. He doesn't talk about anything having to do with the soul in Mind Wars. Mindstar, he takes this concept and adds in the idea of the subconscious soul and all these type of things. And that's where it gets really interesting later on.
Interesting. Munitions of the mind. Who's that?
One more time.
Philip Taylor. Yeah. Black propaganda from Fort Bragg. That must be interesting. It's probably an interesting document. Page 78.
Yeah, he worked with Dr. What was his name? Dr.
Is it Sass or Cease?
Yep. Yeah. Gregory S. Cease from the JFK Special Warfare Center. And that is who I bet that's who he worked with at Fort Bragg to get that from.
Believe it.
Page 91, it says I have a note discrediting Stargate. I'm curious to see what that is. Sorry.
My 91 may not be your 91. Let's see. There's Stargate ESP, right?
Yeah. Project Stargate, because it talks about Project Jedi, Project Stargate, and then after that, it gets into something interesting, the Homo electromagneticus, which we'll talk about. But yeah, he talks about how none of that shit worked as far as the sensationalist telekinesis, psychokinesis, right? These things didn't really work. People didn't really astral project, but they did learn a lot about the subconscious mind as far as operating within the subconscious to manipulate people. And so I think he's trying to dispel some of the sensationalist aspects to some of these projects while also showing what the real science behind it that could be utilized.
That's the first time I've heard of Project Jedi. Do you know
Me
more
too.
about?
I had never heard of that.
Yeah.
So he describes it as after 1980, an article in Psychotronic Warfare appeared in the Military Review, the journal of the prestigious Command and General Staff College. The Army in 1984 launched a 5-month experiment called Project Jedi, named after the Star Wars movie knights who were able to perform exotic magical feats. Project Jedi sought to use neurolinguistic programming as a way of teaching recruits to fire weapons. It was done through psychological analysis of the thought patterns of expert shooters as they fired. And so they were just trying to use NLPs to guide imagery and other conventional instructions.
Right. And the foundation of NLP is like Erickson. So that's it. Like,
yeah, there was a psychotherapist, Georgy Lazanov. Are you familiar with that name?
No, I've never heard that. Who's that?
In the 1970s, something called Suggestopedia was developed by a Bulgarian psychotherapist, Georgy Lazanov. It involved Tai Chi-like calisthenics, followed by mental relaxation and breathing exercises, like Wim Hof, followed with guided imagery to reduce students' natural resistance to learning. While not unreasonable for normal teaching environments, it would have no application to MindWar. So he was just discrediting it as far as using it for MindWar. And again, that's what a lot of that was what can we use and what can't we use out of these projects we have done thus far.
And then he goes into subliminal involuntary psi control, right?
Yes.
SLIPC. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's the entire spectrum of external influences. And so they try to take natural processes of the human thought, like awareness, alertness, and their disposition, and then they influence them naturally and artificially. They adjust to like the maximum amount of subjects that they can. And essentially, it relies on conscious sensory transmission and reception. So some subliminal techniques. He doesn't really get super in depth. He talks about there's a target actor's mind and body that they're trying to act on. And here the objective is not to do bodily or mentally damage, but rather to incline the target to be more receptive to the SLIPC. So they're trying to get people's thoughts, awareness, and alertness and disposition conditioned to a place where they can act on them not unconsciously with this LIPC. That's right. Essentially what it is.
So it's like you're influencing people without their conscious.
That's the whole plan.
Respond, yeah. Right?
And you want to you want their response to be more like they want to obey more without really knowing that they're obeying. And so you're trying to do it in ways where you're getting them, like you said earlier. What do you think? Don't you think that the war, where you're kind of walking them into it, but in every way possible, whether it's physically without them knowing? Because again, there's a spot before we kind of brushed over. It mentions how everybody believes that they have an independent thought pattern, but right. People don't have an independent thought pattern. And we need to study kind of the data of everybody's joint thought patterns and act on those.
Right. That's the interesting thing about the common worldview of the average person. They totally believe they're independent, which is, especially it's hard to believe because we're bombarded with propaganda 24/7. Like it really is MindWar. Like and it comes from all angles: TV, corporate, political, interpersonal, whatever. Even if you're like, you have somebody in your life who's not really on your side, they usually try to convince you they are, all kinds of stuff like that.
Coercion. So I had a theory, and this book proves a theory that I had in something called Silent Weapons that I did. And Silent Weapons was just a series that I did on MK Ultra, and it was called Silent Weapons because it's Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. And so, of course, I called it that. It was just a different take on MK Ultra. And my whole theory with that was because Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars talks about how they want to be able to control people with the push of a button, whether it's economically, socially, whatever. And so my whole concept was MK Ultra, the sensationalism behind it, the astral projection, telepathy, all that, may have been a cover story for what we're talking about here, which is the controlling of the mind or controlling of the body. Well, he gets into this next chapter, Homo Electromagneticus, which, following everything we just went over, Project Jedi, disproving that, talking about the subliminal involuntary psychocontrol, he follows it with the fact that we're electromagnetic beings. We can't control their mind and body on this like weird woo-woo level, but we can use technology to hardwire this mystical concept into reality through digital technologies, which is literally the whole premise of my series of Silent Weapons. And he kind of proves it with this next chapter. So I thought that was super interesting.
Right. So they're influencing us through technology. And he writes about that in the original MindWar document too, right?
Yes. Yeah, yes. He brushes into it. Yeah, definitely.
He expands that on here. Yeah.
He just talks about how the human body is a complex electromagnetic machine, including the thought processes, which is, of course, what MindWars is worried about. Humans, of course, don't normally think of themselves as machines, but as conscious, unique beings. This casts humanity in not a physical, but a metaphysical image, and explains both the basis and for attraction of religions, which, by the way, he even talks about eschatology being used for mind wars, which we see right now going on in our military. I mean, Pete Hegseth just quoted a Bible scripture that came out of Pulp Fiction. It's not even real.
Incredible stuff, man. This is really incredible.
This Hollywood version of Christianity, that's just so funny.
And also like Judeo-Christianity and
Zionist oxymoron.
Yeah, Zionist Christianity doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, guys.
No, Jesus is the last covenant for everyone. For the
Jesus
Jews too.
He
is their savior, right? But they're rejecting him, and then they're making Christians reject him in the process of saying Judeo-Christian. They don't even understand. They're rejecting Christ when they say those words.
They're antichrist. If
they're believers, that's what
they are antichrist. It's that simple.
Yep. I'm not even like and I'm not even like a every Sunday churchgoer, but I understand these concepts. My grandma was, a nun, and my dad went to church, but I've read it all, Buddhism, everything. But yeah, there's some truths in there, and I think that it's crazy to watch Christians just totally reject their own teachings. It's wild.
They have to reject their own teachings to support at least cultural Israel. I think you just have to, because they hate Christian. They're bombing Christian churches. They bombed like Cana. They bombed like the road to Emmaus, like these important Christian churches. They blew the living daylights out of them and killed Christian people. Like, it is so crazy. You just can't even believe that, like, the opposite of like the Christian teachings is people are supporting.
Oh yeah. Anyway. Now this is something that blew my mind too. People have talked about the doubling of the brain many times, and they attribute it to meat, the cooking of food, technology, right? Well, he ties it to something that I thought was super interesting. It's on the next page here, if you want to go to it. If
what's the what page number is it? 97?
94.
Okay, I'm on 90.
Yeah, I guess you went a little past it. It's fine.
Okay, there we go.
It's super interesting. He talks about Francis Ivanhoe. And he's a pharmacologist and anthropologist at San Francisco. He made a statistical survey of the brain case volume, known as the Paleolithic human skulls, that correlated with the increase with the magnetic field strength and the major advances in human culture during the same period. So his whole concept is the magnetic field in our Earth's, people talked about like the freak, the what's it called? The resonance, Schumann resonance. Have you heard of that?
It sounds familiar. I don't.
So the Earth always vibrates at a certain resonance level. It's a frequency, and apparently it changes over the course of time. This is kind of like this is ideologies in like Freemasonry and everything, but it seems to be true, where there is this kind of elevating. It's where the whole concept of ascension comes from. Oh, we're heading to the fourth dimension. We're going to ascend. That's what they're talking about. But so he's tying the doubling of the brain size about 300,000 years ago Both of these periods correspond with major ice ages. And he talks about widespread domestication of Homo erectus around this time. I'm trying to get to the part where he speaks about the electromagnetic. So he proposed a direct link from the magnetic field through the growth hormone regulator pathways in the brain. So to account for the sharp evolutionary gains, he suggests that part of the hippocampus, a section of the brain's temporal lobe, acts as a transducer of EM energy. A part of the hippocampus called Amon's horn, an arch with one-way nerve traffic directed by a strong current flow, may read out variations in the field strength, feeding them by a bundle of well-documented pathways called the fornix to the hypothalamus. So essentially, we're electric. Like he's talking about the functionalities in our brain that operate with electromagnetic frequencies, pulses. So obviously, directed energy weapons. As we'll get into, right? That's what he kind of explains for the rest of the chapter. So this is just laying context to this idea that like dominant micropulsion frequency can be used in today's fields.
Right. So this is Havana syndrome. It's
Yes.
TI stuff. It's all these people. They just don't know the technology. And some of them may be telling, if not all of them, may be telling the truth, is that they're being hit by electromagnetic microwave frequencies or something subliminal, right? That's the whole idea. It's the name of this chapter is the subliminal, because nobody's telling you about Havana system. You'll just feel sick or whacked out or whatever.
And that's a really cool concept. If anybody's curious to look more into that, I know I will be. Robert Becker, MD, and Gary Sheldon wrote a book called The Body Electric, Electromagnetism and the Foundation of Life. Highly recommend that 1985 book.
Yeah, it's right there at the bottom that they reference it.
Yeah, and Becker came across evidence from both, from his research and certain kind of EMF radiation research that can either generate or accelerate damage to living organisms. He cited instances of the Russian researcher who found areas of cell death in the brains of rabbits after subjecting them to magnetic fields. The fields were found to activated stress hormones within the rabbits, but in a way that rabbits could not consciously sense any stress. And so Becker was one of the scientists asked by the U.S. Navy to review possible side effects from Project Sanguine, which is the extremely ELF wave, extremely low frequency transmitter that the Navy intended to build in Wisconsin to communicate with nuclear submarines. So this guy was, it's crazy, dude.
That's so crazy. Like these guys are tinkering around with this stuff. Yep. And then it's subliminal. You just don't know. Like some of these people, I don't feel well. I don't feel around cell towers or whatever. Cell towers have a heavy microwave stuff. But imagine if like a cell tower isn't just sending electromagnetic frequency to the cell phone. What if it's a 6G sending it to you?
Exactly. Or that's the purpose of it, right? And that's the 6G agenda, dude. I'm telling you, it all gets right into. So this talks about sanguine and what they found. Now this is interesting.
I think the word is sanguine. Sanguine. It's like
sanguine. Okay. Yeah, my bad. There's a rapper had a call called Sanguine Paradise.
Sanguine means optimistic.
Okay. So he talks about similar fields that have been shown to raise human blood triglycerides, the harbinger of stroke, heart attack, and arteriosclerosis. So essentially, it could fuck you up.
Right. That's so crazy. That's the 6G. I actually know a couple people who moved away from cell phones and they feel so much better.
Yeah.
They really felt affected by it. And I think that's the whole thing, is that it's a subliminal effect. Like at one time in my career, I worked with cell phones. Like it's a huge property investment. And they're super dangerous. They have to shut them down. People cannot work on them. They will sterilize employees. And if you get too close, you can just feel the hair on your arms, just like you're touching like something like from Tesla or something. Like you can feel the electromagnetic frequencies.
Somebody said hardening of the arteries over here. Isn't it curious that during the plague we had in 2021, isn't it curious that that's kind of what we see is a lot of blood clots, a lot of hardening of the art. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I would imagine it's not far off.
Guys, the 6G agenda and the 6G realization is much scarier than you think, because I think that there were stories during this whole event of 2021 you're talking about where they gave people that something in their body where they actually had that number that they could read it like you're a barcode. I forgot.
Yeah, you mentioned that. You mentioned that to me before. You said everybody's got a I know I blanked on
that
it
other,
too.
now I'm blanking on the number, but
Yeah,
like
he
they
said everybody's
literally
got it,
did that
whatever.
in graves where they could literally have a number. Somebody in the chat probably knows this, but it
Yeah.
would like be a number blink. But imagine if you're a cell phone tower and they can find you and through the 6G agenda, through this like DARPA technology, and just fry you. Like, okay,
That's
this
the
guy's a
plan.
problem, man.
So I did Mac ID.
Mac
there you
ID,
go.
yes,
Yep.
thanks, Diana. Good.
So
You go.
I did a show with Elena Freeland. It's gonna be coming out.
That's her.
Actually
That's the one I'm
tomorrow.
telling. Oh no, not
Yes.
Elena Freeland. Somebody else.
Okay. Well,
But
she
she's
did a
one
lot
of
of
them.
work. She did a lot of work with the original guy who was studying geoengineering. So
Right.
like this guy was,
Carnicom, right? Carnicom,
yes,
Francis
Carnicom.
yeah.
Yep. And so she did a lot of work with him. That's where she got her start, kind of. And since then, she wrote about Morgellons in the 90s, synthetic biology, like synthetic fibers. So I had her on the other day. It was an awesome conversation. We're gonna be dropping that tomorrow. But yeah, it gets into all this stuff, and that's what they're doing, you know. And that mixed with the episode I did with this guy Eric from FM8. He's Fire Medic 8. He only studies synthetic fibers. He'll literally put a mosquito in a petri dish, and there'll be fibers coming out of it, and he'll fuck with it. And at one point, it pulled apart and broke, and he put the fiber back next to the fiber it broke off of, and it reconnected, it reattached, and then he literally pushed it, and it made a bend. So it's fully attached. And so he's finding that in our bodies. Yeah. And so he's saying that essentially, you know, if your car, the electricity, you know, the wiring goes bad. Well, the wiring is so intrinsic into the car, you would just overlay a new wiring. Essentially, they're doing that with our nervous system. And so they're hijacking our nervous system with self-assembling nanoparticles that are replicating inside our body and essentially making little fibers that reach out like the nervous system. It's insane to think about.
Insane. It is so freaking crazy.
It's next level to think about, but I've seen literal physical evidence from him using microscopes and looking inside of, you know, things in petri dishes, and multiple people have done this. So it's real.
That's the view that this guy has. That's so important, and it ties into this book, is this idea of the mechanical man.
Yes.
That we're just evolutionary creatures, we can be biohacked. It's the Epstein view. I just reposted something by Esther Brooks, who was into hypnotism, where he just said, man, the mechanical misfit. See, and it's the idea that they're making it better.
Mm-hmm.
See, because you're already a misfit. You're already flawed through Darwinism. But through technology, I can perfect you. It's actually a satanic kind of Luciferian worldview. It's
Superman.
Really crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And
then they call all these people crazy too.
Right.
Andrew. So the people with Morgellons are crazy. The people with Lyme disease are crazy. The people with TI are crazy. The people susceptible to microwaves or electromagnetic frequency, are all, the doctors just write you off.
I mean, dude, the term tinfoil hat came from them saying that a guy was crazy because he went to a dentist, he had an implant put in. Next thing he knows, he's hearing voices in his head. And the only thing that made it better was when he put tinfoil around his head. And so he started saying, you know, and people call it, oh, tinfoil hat, you know, you're crazy. That guy, did you know the patent came out within 10 years after that for voice to skull technology back in the 50s? 10 years after this guy was talking about it. So they were definitely probably experimenting on him. And wouldn't you know that you can't buy tinfoil nowadays, right? Like you can only get aluminum foil.
Interesting.
And same thing with like lead paint. Your house used to be a fortress, but now we use this acrylic paint instead of lead paint. And so all these EMF waves get right through your house, and your Wi-Fi is a tracker for you in your own home. So these are, I mean, honestly, when you start extrapolating on these concepts, you start to realize like, yeah, they've gotten rid of things that would have blocked this stuff. It's crazy.
And then the smart meters tie into this stuff. Like it's
absolutely
crazy, guys. Like they're literally doing it right under your nose. And it is subliminal, right?
Yes.
So you're not even supposed to ever realize that's part of the mind war. This is all very normal.
And we could talk about a little bit of after this, it talks about the brainwave resonance, which is kind of everything we're talking about, but the science behind how they would manipulate you, which talks about EMR in the brain and how it occurs at 1 to 3 hertz, which are delta waves, characteristics of deep sleep. And then you have 4 to 7, which is theta waves, and 8 to 12, which is alpha waves. And then beta waves, which is 13 to 22, which is the frontal brain activity area. And then the alpha waves is more for like meditation, relaxation, and searching for patterns. So isn't it funny that whenever you look at like 5G towers and you go look inside the motherboard, it just says alpha and beta is like the 2 it runs on. So when we're talking about this and the connection with all this, these towers, They're operating on your literal alpha, beta waves, the same waves that your brain's operating at. I don't think that's by mistake.
I think it's crazy. I've heard a lot of people with sleep irregularities too, and it may be because of the cell phones and stuff. And there's just stories about people close to cell phone towers who just they're just driven crazy, like something close to crazy, because it's disrupting the pattern of the human body, because you go through these delta, like you said, these waves and data, and you have to get into that deep sleep, like that's a foundation of your mental and
or
physical
you're always
health.
in a fight or flight mode. If you're always in a fight or flight mode, then it's easier to get you to have learned helplessness, which learned helplessness is something that is all a part of this. So these PSYOPs are supposed to make you have learned helplessness, so you're more susceptible whenever you're being propagandized in the mind war, and you just go along with it. So it all goes together. And it's funny because it's saying that we're getting more studies about if you're within certain meters of a cell tower, then you're going to have higher cancer rates, whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you're also simultaneously seeing pushes for more cell towers everywhere. Right. So it's like, are we idiots? What are we doing?
You should see the contracts for cell towers when they sign them up for people's property. There are so many clauses in there about we're not responsible for injuries, deaths, anything. Cancers.
Yeah.
Like that's what you sign off to put it on your property. Like you'll never sue us. Indemnity clauses. Why do you need this? It's the same thing with the shots too, right? Why do you need to not be sued? Shouldn't you be sued if you put something harmful out? It's because they're harmful. They know it. They've always known it.
Yes, they do. I mean, he's talking about all the different evidence of higher cancer, all kinds of mortality rates that come from this stuff in this book. Even I'm just kind of skipping over that, but it talks about the this is interesting. So it talks about SLIPC, which is what we talked about earlier. I can't really remember what the hell.
Subliminal information. Was it subliminal involuntary psych control?
Yes. Right. Should not be regarded as merely something to use against someone else. Rather, it is useful to remove antagonistic or disruptive emotions and replace them with receptive and cooperative ones. So that's really all they're trying to do with that. They're trying to replace your emotions with receptive and cooperative ones. So you could just reduce it to that. And here again, it is important to remember that MindWar always redefines the enemy as the problem situation affecting all the human participants, not any segment of the participants themselves. So this just talks about the brainwave technology with this SLIPC seeks to do is place everyone, including the mind warriors themselves, in a positive BWR range. In other words, if you're in a positive BWR range, then you're more susceptible and coercive. And really, they just say you're a morally valuable person. You're a better person. And that's really what it is, right?
Right. So then they reinforce it like it's like the full spectrum dominance of the mind.
Hive mind. Hive mind. Yeah. That's how you get a hive mind.
Right. You're one of the good ones. You submit, John.
Yes. This is how you build the hive
Andrew,
mind.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Essence of danger posed by EMR to living organisms that ELF radiation of 30 to 100 hertz seems to interfere with the body's normal biological cycles. So if you feel like your biocycle is all messed up and you can't sleep right, you might just put your cell phone into a Faraday cage or Faraday box or something.
Yep. So this gets into we could go to page 100 too. For magnetism, I talked about transcranial magnetic stimulation. So this would be like a Neuralink, right? Phenomenon of magnetism is integral with electricity, and human mental activity is electric. So it is unsurprising to find that magnetic fields, while not affecting the body's metabolism to a significant degree, do extremely small amounts of anyway, he didn't get to where I thought he was there. Anyway, it talks about MRI imaging in the area of the brain, which evaluates the opinions about others and beliefs and moralities. So he just gets into a 2010 MIT neuroscientist who discovered that application of the magnetic field to the right TPJ, which is temporal parietal junction, part of the brain. But anyway, it talks about non-invasive techniques called transcranial magnetic stimulation that temporarily disrupts an individual's ability to make judgments based upon previously learned morality. So in effect, pre-indoctrination is suppressed, resulting in the subjects tending to judge situations more on a discrete cause and effect basis. So in theory, TMS could be used to condition personnel to make decisions unencumbered by moral, social, or ethical indoctrination. Oh, they could do this to people that, I don't know, authorities, police, military. And they'll just go, they wouldn't kill Americans. Well, if they're being acted on with this kind of technology, they definitely would.
Yeah, they would. And it kind of goes back to that satanic ethos where the slave shall serve, so you're always trying to get these people to be under your thumb or hypnotize them or manipulate them. And
I mean, look at that last sentence. Look at that last sentence there.
Thus, TMS thus approaches in scientific reality the mythical brainwashing of classic conspiracy legend. Bam.
Boom. I mean, dude, this book is insane, man.
Yeah, he's like talking like he knows the conspiracy theories. He's like,
he knows it all.
Yeah.
He literally called out the conspiracy theorists in that paper, but then left that out here. I think because it's just so clear. I mean, it's too clear.
It's just incredible. These are what they're thinking about. Like, this is what's this. One of the things that you have to realize is that there's so much that is like secretive, right? So these are just the things that come out to the public or leak out or stuff like that. Imagine what they have that is not for the public. Like they have
exactly
so much information.
So but we could extrapolate from this stuff, like page 102, that first paragraph there. He talks about 1990s emergent technique of functional, magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI. It opens a new potential for both the reading of thoughts and the implantation of them. In fMRI, magnetic sensors detect blood flow activity within the brain. By the way, this is important. I'll get to it in a minute because I just went into this episode about sensors that are going to be on your clothing. And by 2030, it's going to be mandatory in the UK to have these fingerprint IDs. There's sensors that read your body data. Literally what we're talking about here, fMRI.
Right, we talked about that, didn't we?
Yes, yes. And so if you do the right thing and you meet the conditions you need to meet, then you can receive Bitcoin, right? Like they could hook up Bitcoin to these sensors, right? That's the whole concept. So I connected that with this idea of this fingerprint ID system. We'll connect that with this idea that they can read based off your blood flow activity, your thought patterns, and accurately, judge what you're thinking. And give it.
I'm getting off grid, man. I'm getting off grid. I'm going to throw my cell phone away. I want a flip phone. I want to go back to a Luddite thing. I mean, everything's corrupt. And then this like invasiveness, the secret invasiveness, subliminal invasiveness it's real. Like it's happening, I think. And that's why people have like this weird thing, like I was talking about earlier, where like these people are on another planet. Like it's like, this might be part of it,
They are. Yeah.
He starts talking. We're only like 100 pages into this document.
No, I know. Yeah, that's why I told you it's going to be probably a couple. But it's worth it. I think. MindStar and FindFar we could probably do together in another episode. But they all go together. It's very important. Like FindFar is really great because it literally talks about. I mean, it literally talks about how we're going to do it. Why we're going to do it. It literally how we do it, why we do it, our methodology, and it just talks about a lot of stuff. So I think that's really important. It's crazy. It talks about police state, divine law, natural law. It's awesome.
I mean, what's scary is that there's people going to implement this stuff, like really dark arts types on a global scale. I think
that's why it's
important. I think what happened in 2021 was it. I mean, this is this stuff implemented.
Yeah, now
we're in the will to do it. Yeah.
Now we're in it and we're realizing it, and it's hard to believe, but I mean, I think it's here. And he talks about in 2012, NASA announced that a system of portals had been identified. Now, this is important because we're seeing a lot of this orb shit. It talks about solar wind and the plasma that comprises about 99% of observable universe on page 103 at the very top. In 2012, NASA announced that a system of portals had been identified, wherein the MS and SW connect and interact, producing magnetic storms and other atmospheric irregularities. What if these little orbs are just like they're producing these tiny little portals, and that's really all they are? That's kind of what they look like. They're little spiral little portals almost. In 2015, NASA launched the Magnetospheric Multi-Scale Mission, consisting of 4 spacecraft to study the magnetic reconnection properties of these portals. So the MRPs link the sun's magnetic fields lines to the lines of the earth and releases gigantic bursts of energy, like the aurora borealis. And then as these MRPs become predictable, calculable, and mapped, M warriors may be able to apply their magnetic fields and waves to emotions and thought patterns of humans within their range. What the fuck is he talking about? He's talking about using plasma. Like, because it consists of 99% of our world, right? So we need to tap into this magnetic, field. I mean, I don't know, dude. This is like sci-fi crazy shit to me, but it seems like they've got this figured out clearly.
He's done his homework. There's no question about it.
Absolutely. It's crazy. Yeah.
Cron biology's got new terminology, high-end terminology. Imagine what they're studying in these PSYOP, things in the military. Just incredible knowledge.
So when we're talking about geoengineering and spraying of the skies on page 108, he talks about atmospheric ionization. And he talks about negatively ionized atmosphere that induces relaxation, alertness, and energy, and a general sense of well-being, essentially, in humans who breathe it, right? So keep that in mind. A negatively ionized charged atmosphere is going to make you relaxed and generally happy, right? Alert, energetic. While a positively ionized atmosphere induces lethargy, exhaustion, irritability, and confusion. Now, if you looked up something like, say, barium or aluminum, which happens to be sprayed in our skies, and you look up, is it negatively or positively charged in the skies? Those are both neutral ions. When they're in the skies, the heat and the pressure causes it to be negatively charged, positively rather, which would render a lethargic, confusing state to the air, because of the ionization of it. Judging by his own words, it seems that the spraying of the skies even kind of put us in this state of like confusion and irritability and exhaustion, lethargy. Do you not feel that way? Like, I feel like there's something to that.
Yeah, 100%.
That's crazy. I think that here's the truth behind what they're doing, clearly. Man, there's just so many answers in here. It's crazy.
Yeah. Air ionizers. That used to be a thing when I was growing up, is people would have these air ionizers to get clean the air.
Yeah, it says air ionizers do not create ions by radiation. Rather, they generate an electrical field which causes cations to ground, leaving the air and attaching themselves to the earth or other grounded substances. So consequently, a human in the vicinity will breathe a higher percentage of anions, which is causing a beneficial sensation. Crazy. He understands cationic and anionic air and shit. Like, I never even heard of these words before.
I've never heard the word cationic in my life. I have no idea.
That's the dry atmospheric conditions and winds, mostly significant in katabatic and rain shadow winds. This is some fucking Japanese words, it seems like.
He's got colors down.
Yes, so that's the funny thing. So clearly he's got a lot of this whole, mystical mystery schools, magic. This is what it comes down to, right? Shapes, colors, the effects of the elements, right? Things like that on your body. In hypnotism, it talks about on page 115. Oh, look at that. MK Ultra, artichoke. Efforts to create amnesiac assassins. The Manchurian Candidate, opportunistic therapeutic and stage entertainment venues, often difficult to distinguish from one another, have been built up around it, and the claims for its efficacy are indeed mesmerizing. The reality is both less fanciful and more practical, useful to the mind warrior. As discussed above, ordinary human sensory awareness is a combination of 95% unconscious impressions and 5% conscious ones. The result is a tsunami of sensations, combining to create the individual state of mind at any moment by an effort of concentration controlled by either oneself or the outside source. So a hypnotist or an EMS device. He's literally saying that they're controlling your mind with EMS devices and that it's not as fanciful as they say in the Manchurian Candidate, but it can be done. Holy shit. So it talks about a constant state of confusion and distraction can be reduced to background noise. In favor, dude, come on, that's everything we see. In favor of a more dominant and constant attractive stimulus. The individual is not sent into a state of unconscious delta sleep, but rather into an alpha state of receptive relaxation. That's what you were talking about a little bit. and then hypnotizing visual object, sound, or other compelling stimulus becomes the remains and center of attention. It's crazy. It talks about
Mein Kampf, Hitler, all the hypnotism he used. A relaxed, tired audience is already alpha receptive.
It also talks about being in a state of hypnosis also allows for fraud on the part of both the hypnotist and the subject. The hypnotist can issue commands or give suggestions that he knows will not be obeyed involuntarily, but simply there's a passive willingness to believe and cooperate. The subject responds for the same willingness because the resist would require a return to a less pleasant, more demanding beta alertness. So I guess he's just really acting on how to, like you said. That's crazy. So this is the majority of it. He talks about magic on 123.
All right, let's check it out.
And memory too. I think the memory thing's important because they're always acting on I feel like our short-term memory and attention span. We have had our memories altered.
No question.
Question.
They've minimized the memory. So you don't even forget what happened in the past. Yeah.
I know people that don't even like smoke weed. You know what I mean? Like they're just normal, never really have, and they even have bad memory.
They don't know what happened in the past.
Yeah. Here it talks about sensory areas of the brain that are more or less permanently wired to the respective physical senses. Hence, their injury or loss are somewhat irreparable. But learning and memory functions are not localized. So as long as enough brain cells remain to be usable. So this talks about memory is so subtle and elusive, but memory is the backbone of one's current situation. It is how one conveniently decides who he is and communicates that to others, but still not the nucleus of consciousness itself. So the ultimate self, which is the thing that assigns meaning and value to both the memory and current sensations. So he's saying we got to alter the meaning and the value that people assign to their memory, and then that would change essentially their memory in a way, because their memory is not localized to it's localized to their perceptions of the memory. That's some crazy way to look at that.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
So this talks about the man's true self, the original self, the first self, and then essentially changing it, right? Because nobody knows themselves. So if you manipulate that aspect of the fact that people don't really know their true selves, that's where you get into the mind star aspect of this. There is a spiritual aspect to it. And yeah, man, that keep people confused. They never find themselves, and it's easier to manipulate them.
It's so scary. The Army Chaplain Corps internal religious PSYOP. Like they're willing to invade the religious space. Trump, by the way, fired the head of the Army chaplainship recently. So he implemented PSYWAR and got rid of the old one and put some new bum in there,
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look at Paula White, Jesus.
Right. And strike and strike and strike and strike.
Yeah. Insane. Magic, Psychon, it talks about the control of the environment or the adaptation of the magic to it. Establishment of the magician's dominant relationship.
All right, look at this. This is in the context of this is really something else. Context of what we're going over.
Mm-hmm.
For the first time ever, Army Chief of Chaplains fired. We literally are talking about Army Chaplain Corps.
Wow.
This is April 2nd, 2026.
Insane.
For the first time in his...
By Hegseth, who's over here quoting Pulp Fiction, biblical scripture.
Right. William Green. Pete Hegseth made national headlines on April 2nd for firing General Randy George, the Army's chief of staff. But on the same day, Hegseth removed William Green, who served on that post since 2023. Traditionally, a person serves as Army Chief of Chaplains for a 4-year term. No reason was given publicly for his dismissal.
Insane.
Green's unusual dismissal came amid a shakeup of top Army brass deployed by Hegseth, an avowed Christian nationalist who believes America's war in Iran is sanctioned by God. And the fake scripture I recite based upon, literal Pulp Fiction, like camp, Hollywood stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, as you're mentioning, he goes from magic to religion. And then he talks about how the vast majority of humans are incapable or unwilling to pursue or endure metaphysics. So clearly he's coming from a metaphysical, magical standpoint. And he's like, look, these people don't even understand the metaphysical aspects of their religions or anything. So we can use the literal terms and affect change on them in a metaphysical way, and they won't even realize it. So again, this is Trump, right? I mean, the master magician,
Yes.
the guy who's dressing as the magician tarot card, and everybody says it's Jesus. That guy was dressing up as the tarot, like the magician, dude.
He sure was.
Crazy.
Weird hand gestures, all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we know that the religion aspect of this is going on. I wonder if there's anything in here that kind of points to what we see today. As you talked about with the army chaplain, it would probably be in there. Reinforce this agenda. Chaplains are commissioned as uniformed officers and are dependent for both retention and promotion on their secular commanders' evaluations. Those who find that they cannot reconcile combat missions and order. So that is kind of important. Maybe he fired him because he couldn't reconcile the combat missions that they're going into, because this talks about how soldiers, that they're religious. We have to convince soldiers that their religious faith should not stand in the way of killing other humans, to reassure soldiers that God is on their side in a war, which is funny because Pete Hegseth recently, even if it is against other humans professing faith in the same God. And though these first, which is crazy, and though these first two missions to minimize or dispel soldiers' fear and death in combat, and then ensure that soldiers' families do not compromise the first three missions. That's the 4-tier way to get religion and not get in the way of these military officers. Well, I love that they use God to get them to go do it. You know what I mean? That's a
right.
Really
I mean, that's part of the PSYOP, though, right?
Yeah,
that's
dude.
it. That's
Yeah.
I mean, it's really like a Christian is supposed to be a peaceful religion. Turn the other cheek and the Prince of Peace, and it's like, no, this is God's will. Go kill. You know
Exactly. Well, it's so pertinent. Page 131 is so pertinent to what we're talking about. What's going on now? It talks about U.S. Army has removed its own religion blinders, as discussed above, and it will be in a position to objectively and accurately use the religion psychon in mind war campaigns. It talks about historically, religion remains today a powerful force in motivating of humans in PW violence. Watch this, dude. This is crazy. As this book goes, in the press of 2016, America's politically pronounced enemy of convenience is Judeo-Christianity's principal competitor, Islam. So he's saying we can use mind wars if we just get rid of the separation of religion and armies, essentially, and utilize it for our mind war campaigns. And then he literally mentions the two main characters here in our current war that we have in current events. So
it's happening. It
says,
like,
yeah,
this has been implemented. It's off the charts. Yeah.
It says here, historically, this new enemy was needed and chosen when the Soviet Union and its Warsaw Pact allies collapsed and communism was no longer plausible as a masses inflaming threat. So we had to create this radical Islam because Soviet Union fell.
Then he writes, to test this, simply look for any mention of Islamic terrorism prior to the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. No. There is none.
No.
They're just telling us they're all terrorists, and the real terrorists are us.
And look,
it's us in Israel.
Look into Operation Cyclone. That's where we went, and that's where the Mujahideen got trained, where we went over there, and Osama bin Laden got picked, his family, and radicalized him, and then utilized him later for Afghanistan and Iraq. This is just, Iraq was a continuation of Operation Cyclone in the 80s, whenever we used the Iranians or Iraqians to go against the Soviets and whoop their ass in the 80s. That was us that, propped them up in the first place, and then we used them later as terrorists.
It's just shocking.
It's clear. It talks about sex after that. We can skip over that if you want. It just kind of talks about patriots.
They'll probably just use it again,
Yeah.
Just more, sexual degeneracy. What does he mean by aristos? I forgot. I think you mentioned that last year.
Aristos, that's what they want to achieve, and that's this idea. And he explains it more, I feel like, in the very beginning here. He actually defines it. So let me find the definition, because in the beginning he kind of defines some of these terms. But it might be easier if you search
aristos,
because you're on a computer.
I am aristos.
But yeah, it's a Greek word for finding a happy
An aristocrat? No, I don't think that's what he means in this
No, that's
context.
not. Yeah, that's not what he means. I think as we go, because he talks about it in the next book as well. What Aristos is at some point. So he mentions it a lot. So it's the
Yeah,
whole
it's all
point of,
through the work. Phase 2, the achievement of the Aristos.
here we go. John Fowles, the Aristos, 1964. Aristos, the best for a given situation. Wow, what a great vague. It's the best for a given situation. Now, any given situation could have any degrees of a best, and that could be terrible. You know, it could be hellish. That's just a very vague term if you really think about it.
Right. It's just his new terminology for the best. It's Aristos.
Mm-hmm. So here on 137, I think this is curious. Governments call them patriots or freedom fighters if they approve of them, and terrorists or insurgents if they don't. And so I just think that's super pertinent to what we see all the time. He goes into Vietnam. He goes into evolution of the metaphors branch, Chi, Tai Chi. Yeah, he just
There's Lansdale and Prudy. There they are.
Yeah,
see,
what
he just this is what I was telling you about. Lansdale, UW legend, a man of mystery during the Huck Rebellion. Creative propaganda campaign, Mag Say Say. And that is the, let's see. Dulles created the Saigon military mission. Lansdale's efforts.
Yeah, I never heard of Lansdale before today, whenever you were talking about it.
Yeah, he's... Prudy was a liaison to CIA's MK Ultra. See, I didn't know that. I wasn't aware of that.
Wow. So he talks about a spoonful of sugar in this. It's kind of funny how, I don't know, he draws this line, but he says a campaign is to stabilize the on-site situation sufficiently for you to touch down and then get a re-envision of the situation so you can achieve Aristos, of course. But if you cannot accomplish its mission in a short time span before encountering it, beginning of focus. Sorry, he kind of talks weird. In that case, of the MFB presence should be withdrawn until it is preconditioned. But it just talks about in action, the MFB team is invisible. Its members materialize without attracting notice. They work to adjust the situation without seeming to interfere with it. And finally, they disappear just as unobtrusively as they arrived. The MFB model is not John Rambo, it is Mary Poppins. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down in the most delightful way. In every job that must be done, there's the element of fun. You find the fun and snap, the job is done. And the job's a game. So I guess he's just saying that, yeah, flattery is what comes to mind for me. With like controlling and manipulating the masses.
It says here that Prudy, he was kind of a player. Like if you remember the JFK movie by Stone, Mr. X was Prudy. It was based on Prudy.
Oh, okay.
It says here Prudy worked with Ewan Cameron and Louis Jolly West. Those are two huge names in MK Ultra. They may be even the top names, like known names. And a guy named Jim Monroe. Shit. I don't know who that is. Yeah. Prudy sent a letter to Aquino in 95. Crazy. So he's in contact with Aquino as well. This is just information I was not aware of.
Damn. This page 155, he talks about parapolitics.
Let's get there.
It's into what we kind of see more often, I guess, in our current, politics is merged with media and like everything's one thing right now. Conspiracy, politics, media, everything's one thing now. He gets into the symbology of this symbol there, which I thought was...
It's interesting that he even talks parapolitics because it's almost like the alternate media has become parapolitical.
Yes.
So the old media is this kind of mockingbird whole thing, but even the people who left the old media and come in are like, they sound like former they sound like Dave McGowan. Yeah. Like almost like Tucker Carlson and Candace and some of these other characters starting to sound.
That's
or even
exactly
Rogan
right.
has guests on, yeah. So
I think that's part of the exposure gate stuff that I talk about, where it's like, look, these guys are they're still the deep state just because they're telling you about the deep state, right? Trump said we were, that Biden was going to bring us into World War III, and everybody believed because he was willing to say that no way Trump would do it. But no, it's the opposite. That's what they're running on. It's just inversion.
Sure is.
You would never think that the guy who's calling something out like that would be a part of it. You know what I mean? Like that's just the general consensus that one would draw right away.
Yeah, Trump is definitely in on it. It's a huge act of treachery. Like, I mean, he said, "Oh yeah, we're going to release everything," and then he's like, "More money for the military. Let's bring on the technates, whatever, conquest, Department of War against Iran."
Yeah, never ending. Yeah, he gets into a long diatribe about political structures and how they evolved over time from the Dark Ages to Plato, or he talks about Plato, he talks about the Enlightenment, Protestant Reformation, and all this shit. But then he finally gets to parapolitics architecture on 163. Right. He references this social contract from Dr. Raghavan Iyer. But he says that he writes, we are especially linked to the complacent 19th century and its tragic aftermath. Words became infected with ideologies of political movements on behalf of classes, elites, ruling classes, empires, and nations. And as a result, we have inherited a welter of isms, liberalism, socialism, communism, fascism, and they proliferate bastard progeny. No ism is a logically complete and self-consistent system of ideas. Its spurious claim to completeness converts it into an ideology, which can win followers and reconcile them to losses and setbacks. An ideology is a form of imposition of holy writ by a putative expert on any doctrinal ism. Yeah, they use this shit all the time. It talks about demoralization results from the imposition by force or fraud in lieu of inducement through a consistent appeal to the unrestricted use of reason. So yeah, but we see that shit all the time. They're definitely using this.
Oh yeah, I think they've got us under control. Like they've psycho-civilized the population beyond all their understanding. It's so subliminal. The consent is manufactured. The MindWar is almost complete. There's probably a few outliers here there, but
it definitely is now. Yeah, and everybody's in their echo chambers. You've got everybody's like, it's the Jews. Everybody's it's this, it's that. It's going to come to a head.
It's the far right. It's the left. It's the
we're going to get a resurgence of the Nazis. I think, not literal the Nazis, but I think we're going to get a resurgence of, just from what I've been seeing, like this general landscape of a lot of people. They're seeing the Zionist thing and they're going straight to Hitler's right. And I'm just like, whoa, back up a little, and so they forget about like the powers that be that utilize these religions, and utilize these movements and that are above those movements. They're not really beholden to any religion or nation. So yeah,
he false flag operations, drum beating, degradation of the individual, population,
degradation of the individual. That's it.
And then application, like you got to like implement this stuff, right?
Yep. Yeah, it gets into all the provocation, removal, reversal, false flag operations, like you said, drum beating. Crazy. Yeah, so this just gets into all the different ways we could do it. Population repression. I mean, we could go into some of these, but I mean, this is stuff we see every day. Yeah. Governmental limitation and removal of civil liberties and rights on the grounds that this is necessary to fight terrorism. Does nothing to deter terrorists, but it will both aggravate the populace towards the scapegoat and discourage protests against the PW promotion. So they go towards the scapegoat, right? And that's why I see with Epstein, like they're using him as a scapegoat as they enact this, and then they use Iran as the scapegoat to Epstein, when in reality, all these are scapegoats to what? Look at the flock cameras or the drone systems that are being built. I mean, my neighborhood right now is wanting to put a bunch of drones and start using it. We already have flock cameras, so they're going to connect to each other with this Palantir database system. Yeah, it's everywhere. Nobody's paying attention. It's in your town right now. I guarantee it. If it's not, then it's 10 minutes away in the next town over. I promise. So that's where we're at. It's all over. And every time we're in a war, there's always a crackdown on civil liberties. And it's always, we'll divert you to the scapegoat as we crack down on you. Diagnosis of disease. I have a feeling that that's about a mental disease of some sort. That hive mind idea of, Oh, he has a disease.
Right. Look at this. They brought in a freaking neuroscientist to do the afterword.
Yeah,
William Henry Anderson. Sun Tzu references. Like that just shows how much behavioral psychology is important in neurosciences. Like,
wow. So check this out. Prescription for the cure, the Aristos. So it says that, obviously they want to achieve this, they want to achieve long, short, and medium range forecasting of, people's social, political, economic forecasting. And then whenever they get a stabilizing and they're fully stabilized, it is the purpose of the MW campaign to change them in such a way to eliminate the threat of PW and ensure a stable, constructive, and endurable environment. The word peace is intentionally not used because it may be necessary to continue the formal state of modern warfare or mind warfare significantly past the initial elimination of violence into correction of the imbalances that could otherwise lead to its return. So formal mind war victory is declared when the situation location can be left to function completely without it. I don't think that ever really happens, but that's the idea. That would be Aristos. You still get mind war. So it never ends. It talks about time and space, different dimensions and shit. Yeah, he gets into everything. But what does this neuroscientist have to say? We could get to that.
we'll get to Anderson at the end. He just says that this is a valid, addition to the studies.
Wow.
Tour of the horizon of problems of the information environment as they relate to national security affairs. MindWar is an innovative, trenchant, and courageous work. The supreme pinnacle of the art of war is to win without fighting, or persuade the enemy of your superior perspective such you'd wish to join you. That is the goal of MindWar, to make the wisdom of Sun Tzu operational. Wow, that's a quote.
It is a blue sky thinking, yet retains a practical core. It contains an essential optimism in a field where such perspective is rare. He's like, man, yeah, blue sky thinking. Because it probably won't go, because the thought, I think it comes down to the whole idea of like, you can't do it the way that he's laying it out. Like, you'd have to have such valor, such virtue as you're enacting these in order to keep a actual peaceful, happy utopia. That's not going to happen, because most people really just want the power that comes with that control. And I think he understands that, yeah, you're not going to get that whenever people have this technology, they're going to act absolutely, with that power.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So find far here on the back, there's a back of the book read that I was going to give you just for like, we can stop here soon. And
yeah, it's probably a good
continue.
Spot. We're almost at 90 minutes.
Yeah. And we can continue like on the last two books next time and just
sure,
put them together and do a 3-part.
Works for me. We had 250 live listeners. Thanks for listening, everybody. Check out Andrew's 6G podcast. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Shout out everybody. I'll just leave everybody with this, the back of the book, excerpt.
Blurb.
Find Far is the third volume in the series, which began with Mind War in 2013 and continued with Mindstar in 2016. The first book introduced a practical technology for reducing, if not completely eliminating, the scourge of physical warfare afflicting humanity by neutralizing violent irrationality in the human subconscious. And then it says, Mind War concentrates exclusively on the physical machinery of the human brain. Mindstar adds the missing element of metaphysical identity, what humans until now have only vaguely sensed as the soul. Now this genius at the core of every sentient being is brought into full illumination and the definition as the Mind Star. And finally, Find Far completes this evolutionary adventure by superseding old static three-dimensional analyses and planning the fourth dimension. That's what people talk about with ascension. We're heading to the fourth dimension. That's what he calls it. Anyway, he's the fourth dimensional mind war dynamic of Find Far, changing the future from reactive to active and adding the fifth dimension of individual creative perspective enabled by Mindstar. But in this, it talks about thought crime, tenacity. It talks about all kinds of shit. So it's going to be a fun book. It's not it sounds all woo. It's going to be great. But yeah, it's not, it's very funny how inverted all this is.
Did you know that Aquino worked at Fort Wahucha?
No shit.
In this
Wow.
capacity, Aquino was sent to the State Department Foreign Service Institute and the Defense Institute Intelligence Agency for the attaché qualification, completed the Military Intelligence Officer Advanced Course at Fort Wahucha.
Wow.
Wow.
I mean, it's all right there in the open.
There it
dude.
is, man.
Pete
I mean,
Hegseth like flew there the day that Charlie Kirk, like the week of, and then the day that that Tennessee factory that makes bombs, which by the way,
blew
like,
up. Yeah.
yep, right whenever this happened, I was like, dude, it probably was that mic. And then that place blew up, and I was like, it has to be, dude. Especially with
It was meant to be a mic. That's the whole thing. It's not a mic. He had two microphones, guys. Why do you
What's
have
he need
like
the one on his
belt
shirt?
suspender? Right. He's
Yeah.
speaking on a mic. What does he need something?
Yep, it's insane.
Pachuca. And that's like the whole thing about like Candace's investigation is like that was a very sensitive when they blew up when she mentioned Fort Wajucha. Like that was like the attacks on her became very intense. Like they did not want. Not a lot of people knew that fort. They know Bragg.
Never had heard about
Presidio.
it. And then Pete Hegseth flew to or from it the day that Tennessee place blew up, and he did a slow flyover over the plant that blew up that makes those bombs. That's somebody's research onto his plane. I forgot what tag number it has, and they tracked it that day, and it made a slow flyover over Tennessee the day it blew up, going to or coming from Huachuca.
That's incredible. Was it Baron Coleman? Do you know his name?
He was just on where was he? I think he was on Tinfoil recently. Stu Peters was talking about it. Yeah, Stu Peters talked about it.
Baron Coleman did a lot of work on these like tag numbers, and like there's a lot of these people in the Trump administration were doing strange stuff around the time. I mean, it's not that long ago that Charlie Kirk was killed. It was only September 10th.
No, it was the turning point for everything, right? The pivot point. And that was what it was meant to be. After that, we go to Iran, we get this religious war, we get the rise of Christian nationalism, so we can, come to a head with this AI governance after this major war conflict. I mean, that's where I think we're headed. I think that's the end game. And by the way, I don't know if I talked to you about this, but whenever Charlie Kirk died, there was a book that came out the day before. It was called The Shooting of Charlie Kirk by Anastasia J. Casey. And that book was fake because I looked for the author, I looked for the book. It's just not real. It came out the day before he died, I think because it was 999, if you do 2025 together. Point being, Anastasia J. Casey, if you read James Shelby Downard's work when he's talking about the killing of JFK, he talks about how names have meanings. Like Kennedy means wounded head in Gaelic, and he was Irish. And so that's important, right? So if you extrapolate that and go to Charlie Kirk's killing, Anastasia J. Casey, Anastasia is a Christian martyr. J is one of the pillars in Freemasonry, and it represents he establishes. And then Casey means a brave, watchful order. So the Christian martyr establishes a brave, new, watchful order. When he died, Kash Patel said, "We have the watch now." After he said, "I'll see you in Valhalla." Almost, I just think all this is kind of weird, but it's connected.
It's Twilight language. It's very weird. It was Boaz and Jachin, right? So the J could stand for the Masonic.
Oh, yeah, yep. And it means he establishes. Yep. And so when you put all that together, it's so clear. And then even Charlie Kirk, it means free man's church. The last man to ask him a question was Hunter Kozak, which his name literally translates to the hunter of the free man. You can't make this shit up, dude. I mean, come on. There's something to that. So
it's just really wild.
I mean, that was my little deep dive.
Like a structure event. Like it's like the JFK assassination or something. It's the JFK assassination of our time, I think.
That was the plan. I think that was the whole point of it. Yeah.
And it's a decapitation strike. Like the guy was leadership potential for a long period of time, senator or something. Like he was going to be around. He was well known, wealthy, smart.
Possibly going to be president. We could utilize him because he just talked about Israel right before he died, and now we can use that to turn again. Yeah, I think that's people are finding out about Israel and the chokehold they have on our country. Not that it's not real, but they're finding out inorganically, and I think that that's important to know and realize.
Right. So, where can people find your stuff, Andrew? They can find you, 6G Podcast, and where can they find you if they want to reach out to you or contact you?
6G Agenda, everywhere you get your podcast, YouTube, we go live all the time. Cheapest Patreon around. And if you want to reach out, 6gagendapod@gmail.com. Otherwise,
6gagendapod@gmail.com. Until next time, this was Aquino's MindWar and a lot of crazy references, like a lot of stuff in here I didn't know. Prudy, and then all these other things, the Lansdale. And it kind of actually reminds me of Crowley he had this thing called the Gnostic Mass, and he like appreciated all these people in history. It's almost like Aquino's listing that stuff out too here as well. But thanks everybody for listening. 200 live listeners, and till next time, thanks so much, everybody. Okay, we are